From Sign News, extinct North American rhinos lived in large herds. From prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. This is Creature Guide Live Daily News. Now, let's get into the animal news of the day. Paleontologists have examined teeth of Teleosaurus major, an extinct species of rhinocerid that lived in North America from 17.5 to 5 million years ago, found at the Ashfall fossil beds in Nebraska, the United States. Here, more than 100 Teleosaurus major individuals at a single waterhole died and were entombed in ash from an eruption of the Yellowstone supervolcano. So, when this incident is occurring, with the rhinos over in Nebraska and as well as the eruption somewhere around 12 million years ago during the last couple million years of the Miocene epoch. Well, technically, you would say four. But in this region, technically across the Great Plains of North America, you would have had different species of horses, camels, early species of canids, or early relatives of wolves and dogs, as well as even earlier species of certain giraffoids in the region. Since the discovery of rhinos at Nebraska's Ashfall Fossil Bed State Historical Park in 1971, researchers have wondered what drew so many animals together in the same place. Did they converge from far away, perhaps to seek shelter from the unfolding natural disaster of the volcanic eruption with its choking ash? And how we can tell that this eruption occurred is not just from the surrounding sediment. Within the areas containing the ash particles, but as well as the bones of these animals containing traces, massive traces of ash. So, okay, we found they didn't move very much, said Clark Ward. We didn't find evidence for seasonal migration or any evidence of response to the disaster. This is very interesting and to an extent not very surprising because the ecosystem of Nebraska at this point, so around 12 million years ago, was sort of like a bit more of a humid sort of savanna than what you see today, which is more of a kind of a windy, more arid, or I guess you could say, yeah, just more arid compared to the Miocene climate. And today, there's not many forests within the region, whereas back then there would have been, small bits of forest here and there, mostly a grassland. Many of the animals have now adapted to a grazing sort of lifestyle, something that you would not have seen close to 20 million years beforehand. So, regarding some of the other animals in the region, this is Cormo hipparion, but also commonly known as hipparion. This is an early species of horse. And this animal was probably around 150 pounds, which is a medium sized horse for the time. Also, unlike modern day horses, these species still had three toes on their feet, unlike the one toed horse of today, or even zebras. So these animals were actually they had a bit of a mixed sort of a feeding style. So whereas certain species of horses today or even zebras, they tend to be mostly grazers. These animals, looking at or at least from analysis done on their teeth, they would have fed both on different species of shrubs as well as even shorter trees and grazed at the same time. But it does look like that more often is the case with grasses showing up on their teeth. As well, the Protohippus existed during this time. Now, neither the Protohippus nor the Hipparion are technically direct ancestors to the modern day horse. However, they are close relatives. Now, the Protohippus was much larger. This animal could reach over somewhere between 450 to 800 pounds. Also, with the believe Protohippus, there were over 11 different species of Protohippus. Wait, is it 11? No, sorry, 9 different species. I'm confusing it with the rhino. Now, the interesting thing is that these are members of the parasitdactyl lineage of mammals, which is usually animals that consists of 5 toes or one single toe. So animals like, let's see, elephants or even us were parasitdactyls, and zebras, horses, they are as well. Oh, I already mentioned the size. Okay, so this was technically like the largest horse, one of the largest horses in the area. Let's see, where were we? By studying, oh, okay. So Ward and colleagues examined ratios of isotopes of strontium, oxygen, and carbon in Teleoceras major. So this is the rhino in this instance. Oh, I forgot to mention. So this rhino, so this is a member of rhinoceratids, which include the five different species of today. And this animal is very likely the predecessor to modern day rhinos. And they've already been evolving horns for quite some time. Rhinos first evolved somewhere around 40 to 50 million years ago during the Eocene epoch. Back in also in places like Wyoming, Nebraska, South Dakota. And it wasn't until much later in the Cenozoic era that they would eventually migrate to Asia and even Europe and Africa. Now, at this point, their horns aren't anything really impressive. Now, you could say for the time, though, during the Miocene, this is quite an accomplishment in their evolution. Despite this being even small for something like a Sumatran rhino of today, which has the um, which has the smallest horn of any rhino. It's they barely get to a little over 9 to 11 inches. This is probably some relative of a Proceratidae. You could somewhat say giraffoid in quote of the time. Anyway, these rhinos, there have been over 11 different species of Teleoceras that have been discovered. They are members of the specifically subfamily of rhinos called Aceratheriinae, and they could weigh up to 4,000 pounds. Okay. So let's see, where were we? By studying carbon in the animal, we can reconstruct carbon in the environment to understand what kinds of vegetations live there. We can use it to reconstruct how wet or dry the environment was. And strontium tells us where the animal was foraging because the ratio of isotopes is related to the soil and supporting bedrock. Teleoceras major was a one horned rhino with a barrel shaped body and stubby legs like a hippo. Yeah, this is important to note because pretty much the only one-horn rhino today is the greater one-horn rhino over in India. So let's see. Where was I? Teleoceras major was a one-horned rhino with a barrel-shaped body and stubby legs like a hippo. Like hippos, they fed on grass. Well, hippos actually have a much more varied diet, not just grass. But that is another interesting characteristic of rhinos during their early evolution is that they tend to have somewhat, it seems, a bit of a semi-aquatic lifestyle due to how partially stubby they are and um, they also had quite wide feet compared to their body size, and also looking at the different ecosystems in these different regions, it's very possible they might have spent some of the day within the water. They could have fed on different species of aquatic vegetation, but they were probably most likely grazers. Now, let's go on to one of the. Oh, okay. So this is the one of the Teleoceras species skeletons. This is probably a smaller species. And yeah, this is a bit more in depth as just to the overall. This animal had a huge stomach, and you need a larger stomach when it comes to digesting plant material. Carnivores do not need very large stomachs for processing meat. Oh, also, some early rhinos during this time also had tusks, but these were also rhinos that you would tend to see a little later in time, even towards the Pliocene, so around 5 to 6 million years ago in Africa. And they almost didn't even bear a horn. It's a bit of a nub at the top of or at the tip of their snout, but they had very elongated bottom tusks, probably used for goring into each other during the breeding season. Now, this is Procamelus. So it is very likely that this animal might have been also the predecessor to today's camels. So this is a member of the Camelidae family of artiodactyls, or and more specifically the subfamily Camelinae. But this individual was probably somewhere around 1 to 200 pounds. It was not a very large um, camel, like even well, let me rephrase that. For the Miocene, it was a decent sized camel. It was primarily herbivorous. It is possible like even modern day camels, that it could have been somewhat omnivorous, considering modern day camels are notorious for occasionally feeding on flesh and definitely munching on bone. Now, unlike modern camels, the Procamelus did have these distinct two incisors on their top jaw that you don't really find in today's camels. This individual was prey for the different species. Oh, not you. Well, no. Uh, I lost track. Okay. This animal was prey for different species of canid during this time. So let's go over to them. This is Leptoscion. Now, this animal might have gone after a newly born Procamelus, since I'm guessing it probably would have only weighed 2 to 3 pounds. And this in the bottom, this is a prehistoric Vulpes vulpes, or a red fox, since red foxes first evolved somewhere around 400 to 700,000 years ago during the later Pleistocene epoch, or the Ice Age. But Leptoscion was actually smaller in some cases than today's red foxes. These canids were also, this wasn't the first canid. They first evolved somewhere around 40 million years ago during the Eocene epoch, also in North America. And that was Hesperocyon. But Leptoscion weighed no more than 4 pounds. So it was quite a small canid, probably fed on different species of rodent at the time, and quite could have been also quite omnivorous. So even feeding on different species of berries. And like hippos, the researchers think these rhinos spent a lot of time in and around water because of their vast size, and they had few predators in the Miocene epoch. But their calves would have been vulnerable to hyena-like predators called bone-crushing dogs. Indeed, some of the specimens found at the Nebraska site bear evidence that scavengers removed portions of their carcasses after they died. And ancient tracks from the 45 kilogram or 100-pound dogs have been found there. They were bigger than 100 pounds. That's a small individual if it's the genus that I'm thinking of. That's a pup. Yellowstone's enormous volcano has erupted many times over the past 12 million years. Ash from the eruption easily would have traveled 1,127 kilometers or 700 miles across what is now Nebraska, where it piled up like snow nearly a foot deep in places. But wind blown ash continued to fall on Nebraska long after the initial eruption. That ash would have covered everything: the grass, leaves, and water. Now, let's go over to the other canids. So this is Synarctus. This animal is slightly larger than Leptoscion. Synarctus was about the size of a bobcat or a coyote in some instances. This animal wasn't really much more than 30 to 40 pounds. Probably fed on smaller ungulates within the region, so two-toed animals or the artiodactyls. So by artiodactyl, that refers to a mammal that has two toes, or it has five fingers that are set into like something like a flipper or a hoof. So technically, something like an orca or killer whale is an artiodactyl, because a killer whale's flipper has five fingers. They're just blended into that specific appendage. Whereas the tail, it's just the single tail vertebra, but the rest of that structure just consists of hard connective tissue. There aren't any distinct bones within most tail outside of the vertebra. And so here's the skull of the animal. So it was definitely capable of crushing the bones of much smaller, probably rodents within the region. Now, here is the impressive individual. This is Epicyon, very likely the predecessor to most modern day canids today, especially wolves. And this animal could reach over 350 pounds. There's about three different species that have been discovered. These animals would have preyed on the rhinos during this time. So it would have been something like, spotted hyenas trying to hunt down smaller hippos. Um, Hyenas don't usually go after rhinos. But the thing is that this animal also probably specialized in different members of the Proceratidae family of mammals. So this is Synthetoceras. This is a 600-pound, you could say, in quote antelope at the time, even though it's technically not true antelope. It's actually more closely related to bovids, so animals like bison, cows, than it is even animals like deer or antelope. It did have this distinct horn. This has been preserved with the skull, but these were also quite agile animals. Now, in the background, this is probably Synarctus. Might be going after a smaller Synthoceras. Okay, well, um, let me know what your favorite species of Miocene animal is from Nebraska. And from prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. This is Creature Guide Live Daily News. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you love talking about animals, and share this show with everyone you know, because nothing is better than all animals all the time.